the chief Sephardic rabbi in Israel put out a statement. He didn't make a statement, really. He said it in one of his classes, and the way things work when things are recorded and they get broadcasted. And
you have to be very careful.
My humble criticism of him in general is that he thinks he's his father, and he's not. And he thinks he can get away with the things his father got away with, but he's not. He's not his father. And the world is less forgiving of him because he's not his father, yet he still acts as if he is his father, and that's okay, I understand it. I just, it would be better for him and for the Sephardic rabbinate as a whole to, I'm not the same person. The land of Israel is a holy place. And our Chachamim, in the Torah, we have rules. Who's allowed to live in Israel and who cannot live in Israel? The bottom line is that idol worshippers don't belong in the land of Israel.
Right.
They don't. It's not. They can belong anywhere else in the world. But the land of Israel is meant to be for people who believe in Hashem.
Yeah.
It's not true that non-Jews cannot live in Israel. Non-Jews can live in Israel. They always did live in Israel. The question is, a non-Jew who's not an idol worshipper. There are many such non-Jews who are not idol worshippers. Non-Jews who accept upon themselves the 7 laws of Noach. They believe in one God. They don't curse Hashem. They have a system of law in which they follow. They don't steal. They don't murder. Okay, these are not complicated things. Such people are allowed to live in Israel. What bothered me was not so much that he said that non-Jews cannot live in Israel. What bothered me was his next statement of, and the other ones that are allowed to live in Israel are only there to serve us.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, that the news, for some reason, they made a big issue about the first part, which is understandable, and the second part, which is ludicrous. And what can I tell you? I didn't vote for the chief rabbi. I'm not a big fan. He's a Torah scholar. But I'm not going to lie to you. He's representing a worldview that not all of our Chachamim. I can't lie to you that some didn't. Some did feel this way. There are other Chachamim that had other worldviews on how to approach the land of Israel and the non-Jews in the land of Israel. I have the same criticism not on the Sephardic chief rabbi. I have the same criticism on whose jacket is this? I'll put it here. I have the same criticism of Rav Kook's family. Rav Kook was a pretty big. He was extreme in certain areas, but he was a pretty big into the universal picture. Jews, non-Jews, all religions in the world. Rav Kook has some pretty interesting teachings that have been censored by his family, especially his son, Rav Tzvi Huda Kook.
Published, he has writings that have never been published.
Sure. Maybe they say between 80 to 120 manuscripts of his that are just hidden. They're locked in Yeshivat Merkaz Rav Kook. And his son spearheaded the movement to censor his writings. And I am a small person to criticize Rav Kook's son, who was a big tzaddik in his own right. But Rav Kook's son was a nationalist, a die-hard Israeli nationalist. And there were some teachings of his father that I guess he felt that he didn't understand or he didn't want the world to know about. And suffice to say that we have many Chachamim that were not like that. Rabbi Uziel is my greatest example. Rabbi Uziel is our chief rabbi. What can I tell you? Passed away in 1953, but he would have done the world a lot of good if he was here. Rabbi Uziel, when he was appointed chief Sephardic rabbi of the state of Israel, he was a chief Sephardic rabbi even before when the British were there, but once he was the chief rabbi of the state of Israel, he made it his point to meet with the Muslim communities in Israel, with the Druze communities in Israel, with the Christian communities in Israel. And he told them, I'm not just the chief rabbi of the Jews. He said, I am the chief rabbi of the state of Israel. And part of my job is to be here for you as well. And that was, you would say, an enlightened worldview. To Rav Uziel, that was obvious. It was obvious that he wasn't just the chief rabbi of the Jews. He was the chief rabbi of a country. That means that he was responsible for all the citizens in the country that chose to seek him out. And actually in the wars that were happening in the state of Israel, there was a special war that happened in Yerushalayim. I believe this was even in the 1930s. This was before there was a state of Israel. The Jews and the Arabs were on a battlefield, and Rav Uziel stepped out. Maybe it was 47. It could be 47. That makes more sense to me historically. Rav Uziel steps out into the battlefield in his robe of the chief rabbi, with his chief rabbi turban, in between two sides that are firing at each other. And he calls out in Arabic. And by the way, you should know, the detriment of the state of Israel is that they chose that the people who spoke Arabic didn't lead the country. There are many, many, many thousands of Jews that spoke the language, understood the culture, and instead, Israel was led by people who had a Western ideology in a land that was very Eastern. But you can't fix history. I can just tell you my personal, humble opinion is that there were not enough people who understood the culture guiding the country there. We've built up our country as if we were colonialist occupiers of a land when we shouldn't have come with that attitude in the first place. We've created this problem of we have occupied territories, instead of realizing, hey guys, it's all about tribes and wars and guns and egos and if you know how to speak to the right Middle Eastern leader with the right language and offer him enough cups of tea and coffee and some baklava in between, and you tell him that his daughter is going to have free tuition, whatever it is, that the world could be a different place. Rav Uziel comes out to the battlefield and in fluent Arabic calls out to the Arabic side and the Jewish side in Hebrew. He tells them to stop shooting at each other, and he gives them a whole speech. It didn't stop the war, but it stopped the battle. Rav Uziel said, we're both the children of Abraham. He said, I am a son of Yitzchak. He said, you're a son of Ishmael. He said, but we're cousins. He said, we're in this country together. He said, whether you like it or not, neither of us are going anywhere. He said, so we can decide to spend the rest of history shooting at each other, or we can figure out a way to make this work for each other. And that battle shut down. Both of them put up their arms and went back home. Rav Uziel viewed himself as the chief rabbi of the whole state of Israel. And such leadership is lacking on every side. In the Ashkenazi chief rabbinate, the Sephardic chief rabbinate, and a rabbinate that sees the world a little less black and white than the way we like to present it today. We have an inferiority complex. We've been knocked down by the world for 2,000 years for being Jews and dirty Jews and ugly Jews and cheap Jews. So we're pretty much sick and tired of having to deal with anybody who's not Jewish. But that's a mistake. We can't give up now. Now we have the upper hand. Now we're able to do the things we weren't able to do before. And it's time for somebody who understands the world a little differently than the way some other people would like. So the answer is, yes, the chief rabbi said it. Yes, that's what he meant. He represents, unfortunately, a growing group of people in the Jewish community, but he does not represent us. And that's okay. He's entitled to his opinion. Yeah.
It's not so bad compared to the Islamic State, which...
Okay, listen.
that said that when you win a battle against a country, you're allowed to take all of the inhabitants as slaves and sell them in the marketplace or use them for anything you want.
I would encourage, but I don't know that it's ever been translated into English, but I know that Rabbi Angel wrote a book about him, Rabbi Hayim David HaLevi. I've mentioned him to you a few times in my classes. Was the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv Yafo. He was a Sephardic rabbi that the Sephardic establishment chose to bury under the levels of dirt that they created. I'm writing a book about him, about Rav Yosef Masab, and a couple of tzaddikim. He's maybe not going to be in this book, but in the next one. Rabbi Angel wrote a terrific book, so I'm just not sure if it even needs a book after he wrote such a thing.
Is this a rabbi from New York?
Yeah, there's two of them, and I never know who's who, so don't hold me to it. Yeah.
Archangel.
Yeah, he's from the Upper West Side.
Is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah, I think so. He wrote a book on Rabbi Uziel too. That story that I just told you is from that book.
Unavailable, unfortunately.
Really?
I've not been able to find it.
Interesting, okay.
I know you have a copy.
I have a copy? Actually, I had a copy. I'm borrowing someone else because I lent my copy to someone, I don't know who. So I'm borrowing someone else's right now.
Books anymore either.
Yeah, but the one by Rabbi Hayim I just got the PDF manuscript because the book is out of print. The PDF of his Hebrew writings. The English one is available on Amazon. Rabbi Hayim David Halevy suggests that a state of Israel, even an ideal religious world, could actually be a secular state of Israel. He suggests that civil law is not just a new thing to the Jewish people, but it always was a civil law that did not go hand in hand with Torah law, and that there is room in Torah law to have a civil law that the nation votes on, that is democratic, that is, it's a complete rereading of many texts that other people quote, but you read the book and you could say, I agree or I don't agree, but he puts a very convincing argument forward. And the argument perhaps could bring a lot more peace just in between the Jewish factions that are in Israel. The halachic state, which would, stone people to death in the streets of Tel Aviv, is probably not the ideal that any of us are working to, although there are definitely Jews who would, in their mind, without realizing what it would look like, probably would push for such a thing. And Rabbi Hayim David Halevy suggests there's a middle ground. The Torah is vague on certain things for a reason, and it allows you to fill in the blanks. It's worth reading and understanding his opinion on this matter.
And what's the name of the book?
Rabbi Hayim David Halevy, gentle scholar and courageous thinker.